Morning.
Hi, Brad.
How's it, Dirk? How are you?
Doing yourself?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Is it you that just passed the board exam?
Yes, indeed.
Congrats,
We got our
man.
results. Thanks so much. Yeah, it was a big relief, I must say.
Yeah, is that the first time you wrote it?
It's the first time I've written it. Yeah,
Wow, okay, quite an achievement.
yeah, I was very happy.
Yeah, great, man. Now the hard work starts.
Now the hard work's only just beginning.
Morning, Ferdy, how you doing?
Good morning.
Morning, Brian.
Welcome home.
Thanks, yeah.
How was it?
Expensive. Yeah, 25-1. It's absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they still don't live like we live.
Well, I'll tell you a story where the exchange rate works in your favor. I got these new clients. They in their 60s. They don't have a pension at all, really, because they worked as medical doctors their whole life for NGOs. They're German, and the last parent passed away recently, late last year, and they got 475,000 euro inheritance. They got that last year. It's still sitting in the German bank account, and it's increased by like 30% in rand value. And they live in the northwest, so they're going to live in South Africa and live off these euros. And every day, the inheritance just gets larger and larger. So that's a good news story.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah, I stayed with a school friend who's actually got a financial planning business as well. Small business, probably quite similar to what we have here. And he's just turned down an offer to buy for £12 million because they're gonna obviously cut up the business and move the assets and everything. So he doesn't want his clients to go through that. So to turn down to become a few hundred million rand, I thought, wow, that's really walking the talk. So it's crazy. Yeah. I think let's just give everyone a few more minutes. I see a lot of people are not joining us today. How are you, Marguerite?
Morning, Dirk. I'm good, thanks. Cool and beautiful here in the Cape. Blue skies, birds are singing, but otherwise, yeah, otherwise chilly.
Yeah, it's chilly over here as well. And Ferdy, you look like it's pretty cold in the Free State.
Yeah, no, it's really cold. Winter is here.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing in London. Everyone wears black, so it's just like it's terrible. And it's spring there, but it was still pretty cold. But I mean, like if you wear black, you just look like everybody else. It's crazy. It's quite depressing, actually. Yeah. Are there any newcomers here? Anyone that hasn't joined us before?
Yeah, boy, yes.
Who's that? Mark, have you got a camera there?
Yeah, well, I'm seeing my own ugly picture, so I don't know why you're not seeing me, which is probably a blessing in disguise.
You want to turn it off and on? Maybe that'll work.
I've done that 3 times. I'll try again.
Morning, Jen.
Teams, you got to love it. Eesh.
Morning, Simon.
How's it, Dirk? How are you?
Good, yourself?
Good.
Yeah. Mark, do you want to just introduce yourself? Where you from and and why join the group?
Now you're distracting me from trying to get my camera going.
Okay.
From the, I wish you could see my camera. I'm sitting here in a golf shirt. It's a tough life in Durban when it's not riots and whatnot. Gosh, been in financial services since I was 22, which is like 33 years ago, somewhat 32 years ago. God, there's my maths, good financial planner. Friends with Ferdy and some other people who said, hey, why aren't you part of this group? And I thought that's a bloody good question. So here I am.
Okay, great. And tell us a little bit about the kind of work you do, Mark. And if you say, sorry, who did you say you were with?
So I'm with a small little practice called Invest for You. God, I had to think, I need coffee. So technically we are X-teen and X-teen CC trading as Invest for You. There's the whole 5 of us, 3 reps, 1 trainee rep and an admin lady. I do basically everything. Joined them about 2.5 years ago, which was the start of my whole paradigm shift, because this brokerage has been a fee-based brokerage as and when only from the very beginning. So it's been fun getting used to focusing on that, which is what started the change. So I hate short term, I'll say that openly. So although I'm credited for it, I pass it on to my colleagues. But yeah, I think I'm what you would call in the old days a good old GP.
Okay, general practitioner.
But I don't earn a doctor's money. Unfortunately, I've always cared about clients long term. I've always adopted the approach that if a client is a client, becomes a client, they're a client for life. Yeah, I've had a good few jobs in the past where I've had to leave because I didn't go for the maximum fee option or whatever. So yeah, I'm karma rich and ront medium.
Yeah, okay, it sounds like you probably fit the group then, so well done on that. And Mark, I'm just interested, when you say fee-based, there are different versions of that. Which version are you guys?
So we have a template where you know, we bill for everything. I do want to just say that I'm sort of partway down that road. The 2 ladies are well used to it. I'm still, you know, there's some things where I'm like, am I really going to charge, you know, 50 Rand to submit a beneficiary change? But on the product side, so for example, life contracts are as and when we don't have any annualized contracts, and then we charge on certain transactions. So I don't know quite what that makes us, but it's I haven't got rich quickly. In fact, that's still a dream.
Yeah, no, so there's no judgment in this group on how we earn, but that sounds quite admin heavy.
It is. I mean, when I joined, there was just the 2 ladies. So they've gone from 2 to 5 in 2 years. The trainee consultant is also sort of paraplanning and helping with admin. So, and obviously our beloved government hasn't helped with all the nonsense. So I think that, you know, beeswax is a savior and the good CRM is a savior. And so, yeah, it's heavy, but getting there.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the group. Any other first timers here today or not? Group has grown a bit in the last while. Okay, cool. Guys, what I thought we'd do today is first, just in the last session, we shared our process with you. We went through the slide packs, and then I sent to those who requested. I've just, you know, is there any feedback on that? Anyone who wants to ask any questions around that? I thought we'd just start with that. Maybe some questions.
Unfortunately, I cannot lie. I did request it. I did look at it. But more than looking at it is as far as I got, because I've been busy digitizing all my files. So thank you. I like what I saw. That's about as much as I can truthfully say at the moment.
Yeah. I think some people think we're crazy sharing all that, as some calls it IP. But the truth is really that, having a slide pack is one thing, and being able to work with it, utilize it, is something completely different. So I'm pretty sure when some of you looked at it, the excitement died down quite quickly, because it's like buying a Ferrari and not knowing how to drive it. Although I'm not saying it's a Ferrari, but if you guys at any stage want to reach out to any of us, Alex, Ben, or myself, just do so. I think what's important is that you do build a process, and that'll be different for all of us. But I promise you, having a process that you take your clients through is really, really invaluable, instead of just winging it. And then Ryan, I see you haven't got it. Okay, I'll share it with you. Just send me a WhatsApp afterwards. And then also what's important is just to make it your own. So I know Simon will advise you, when you first start using something like that, it feels a bit robotic, which is normal. But eventually it will become your own, and you'll personalize it. But it does work. I mean, we had a case again this week where the comments we got from, the feedback we got from a new client was really, really, really encouraging, and the kind of thing we'd like to hear. And that was really just because the process helps us focus on the people more than the clients. What I thought to do, because I did have some people ask, is we do have a similar thing for risk. So I thought what I'll do is that we would just run through that. And then what I thought I'd do is just share some, I've just come back from the UK. I went to two conferences there, two one-day conferences, one with Brett Davidson, who we work with, and then another one that Abraham Okosanya runs, and that was really, very cool and very interesting to see the similarities between what's going on in the UK and the differences in the UK industry and what's happening here. And there were some unbelievable speakers there. So I thought I'd just share some of that and just keep today a bit more of a general session, and then also maybe in the end we can just discuss anything that the group would like to talk about in future sessions. Okay, so I'm going to first just share my screen. Okay, can we all see this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what we kind of what we did in our process, in our third meeting, which you guys would have seen, where we, the developing scenarios, where we kind of do the big reveal and show clients their plan, where they stand, the snapshot, and then from there we start building the plan with the clients. Where we have in the past kind of included risk in that, we're finding more and more that it becomes a bit much sometimes to have the talk about their life plan, their financial life plan, and where the risk situation is. It's a bit much sometimes. It can be a bit overwhelming, not only for the clients but for us as well. So what we did is we've Alex and Ben have built this risk presentation completely, which we run separately, and it's also just enabled us, I believe, to look at risk far more thoroughly than we did before. Not that we didn't do a thorough job, but just far more thoroughly and specifically. And then it also allows clients to understand, what risk benefits are and how important it is. Because as we know, buying this kind of stuff is a grudge buy. So I'm going to run through this really quickly. So again, we have an agenda, and again, we would adjust this according to, a lot of it is stock standard, but we could adjust it depending on the client. So you can see I didn't develop this. This was Ben with his artistic PowerPoint skills. So we just, yeah, it's okay. I'm just going to run through this. So we obviously cover the different types of cover, term and whole life. We go through waiting periods. Okay, life cover. Obviously, either to cover debt that we have or to provide income in the future. Okay, so this is all pretty stock standard. So that's quite important. A lot of clients don't quite understand the difference or the need for lump sum and disability income. And then dread disease, which is confusing for everybody. And then we touch on premium patterns, which is really important. We found like this is a big thing that we focus on. You know, and I know like products like BrightRock kind of address this in a way where, you know, we have risk benefits for different periods of time. So we do use BrightRock, although the underwriting is quite a problem, we find. I'm not sure if anyone else shares that sentiment. But we'll often find that clients come in and they've got age-rated premiums or fixed increase premiums on cover that they're going to need long-term, specifically cover like your dread disease and disability. And the problem with that is obviously eventually it just gets too expensive for them and they have to cancel, and then they can't afford it, and then they can't get cover because they're not insurable. So that's quite important. Yeah, so all of this is pretty stock standard. I've explained loadings. As you know, smoking is making cover very expensive these days. We discussed the suicide, and then we obviously run through any points that that are specific then to that client. So again, you know, we just find that having a more specific discussion around risk allows us to do it properly, because often we kind of breeze over it, because I think, you know, most people in this group don't like to sell, so we feel a little bit dirty, you know, when it comes to talking about risk. But the reality is that it's the backbone of any lifestyle plan. You know, if you can dream all you want and think about the future, but if you don't have the correct risk in place, it's like driving around in an uninsured car. Brian, when do we? Sorry, let me just have a look. When do we? Sorry about everything popping up. When you process, do we have this discussion? So it's really important, and Brian, we're kind of playing with this, but we normally have, after the initial engagement, we then have a separate risk meeting. It depends. If it's a young client, then sometimes we could possibly then include it initially, because sometimes when it's a young client, like the talking about retirement, although it's important, is like really difficult to do. So a lot of the time it's kind of sorting out their finances where they are right now. So in other words, just helping them get organized and that. But yeah, we do have it separately. I know, I mean, I don't know if Alex or Ben want to come in there, because they generally are dealing more with our younger clients. Guys, if you want to comment.
So, I mean, Brian, you know our process probably better than most people by now, so you kind of see how everything fits in. The need for the risk discussion came in primarily when Ben and I started seeing younger clients, because up to that point, Dirk was seeing a lot more of the retirees. And we just found that to try and explain all of these concepts, which can be confusing, just while talking about investments and, you know, doing our normal investment education, it became too overwhelming, and then the meeting would go on for 3 hours and the clients would forget, you know, what you spoke about the investment side, what about the risk side. So that's when we decided that you have to split it. It also deserves the respect of having its own conversation, because it is such an important topic that especially young clients need to know. So normally we would have the client education, the developing scenarios, and then say, okay, listen, before we wrap up this, it's important that we also talk and cover your risk side, and then that's a whole separate meeting. Yeah, so that's kind of where it fits in there.
So it's not it's not something you, for instance, if you're doing planning and say you've done life planning, and that is more about investments or whatever, and then you get well, I'm not assuming everyone uses the same tool here, but I always go life, death, disability. So, and those are different sessions. This would I just see this is like super powerful to help explain and provide visual prompts when you do the planning for death and disability, because it's like you don't want to like, okay, what are the premium patterns again? You just got this, and it's also great to like almost. I think it's great to say, well, this is what we believe as a business. Our view is we will always try and start with a level premium pattern. We're going to quote on that. We'll refer back to these notes as to why we believe that, and it kind of forms part of the pack of advice, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, and like anything, we know that education is empowerment. So if we can help clients understand why we are doing a level premium or age-rated premium, whatever the case, then it makes their life a bit easier. So that, for example, we put forth a recommendation saying you need a level premium for this and this is going to cost you R1,000. If they get approached by a broker, a year down the line and say, sheesh, I can get you a deal for much cheaper, then at least then they'll know, wait, hang on, there's something fishy on there. So at least, it kind of gives them the power to be able to make that decision on their own.
Yeah. Awesome.
To add on this there, sorry, Brian, is that I also found is that even with the married couple and with young kids and things, because you've done the planning already and you've got the expenses and things, it's very also nice sets up. We can have a conversation and say, okay, if husband were to die, how much of these expenses would still stay, and you've worked it out, and they're having a discussion, and it's a discussion again, husband and wife are having that discussion. You've got the spreadsheets all there, and then you can actually working out an actual amount. And so when you're putting the life cover in place as well, they know exactly why they are taking X amount. It's not just a number that we've sucked out of the air and said, oh, you need 10 million life cover, sign here. Okay, it's actually been a discussion. They know exactly why they have it. If something happens to one of them, they're going to be fine because of this, and this. And so again, through that planning, it's just really great to, they are on board. They're actually saying, let's do this or let's do that. So they're actually saying, we need this.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you would do to answer Haley's question. If she's asking you the question, it would be wealth integrator, I suspect, that you utilize to see what shortfalls there might be or whatever for cover. And so if you're doing that, if I'm understanding correctly, you would say, look, yeah, it looks like there's enough cash in your estate if you pass away for your wife to live for 40 years or whatever. And then you would talk about that's maybe not high enough because they're only 30 years old. And then you would bring the slides in and educate them a little bit just about life cover itself and not go into income protection. And so it's kind of like you can break that up into little parts and just focus on the teams like the slides you want. That's pretty valuable.
So Brian, I'm going to share something else with you. So what we've started doing, what I've started doing, and it works really well. So like let's say I'm dealing with someone a bit older, everyone's got cover in place, okay? And but they've got no idea what they got. They've got no idea what they got. They've got no idea of premium pattern. They've got no idea what it's going to cost in future. They don't know if they're overinsured, underinsured. In 33 years, I can tell you, not even 1% of clients that we deal with know what they've got or why they've got it. So what I've started doing, I'll share this. I've taken our budget sheet, and so what I've done is I've got if the current budget, and then we run through scenarios. If he were to die, what's for her? If she would die, what's for him? And then the same with disability. So we run through. So like for instance, bond repayments, 20 grand, but if they die, we need to pay that off. So we'll start off in the planning, say, right, so part of the risk is we'll put debt on one side, okay? And then when it comes to the premium pattern, we'll say, well, listen, now you've got this plan under control. If we stick to the plan is to get rid of all your debt in 7 years. Then I'm quite happy to go, well, let's go and accelerate a premium pattern for that cover, because we know that in 5 years' time, you're going to be close to having knock that off, or at least you're going to be left with 20% of it. So that part of the cover, we're quite happy to put an aggressive premium pattern. We don't need whole life premium there because we know that's then going to be settled, because we know that they're either going to upgrade the house or do an alteration, or they're going to buy somewhere different or whatever. And then, so like they'll keep the domestic worker. So we run through each of these things, and this takes a bit of time. But when you do it this way, then we know they like own this budget, so we can see what the expenses are. And on death and then disability, there would be more because, for instance, groceries, he or she would still be around. For instance, medical aid would come down. So like we can get really specific around what they need, and then also we can match the premium patterns, because look, we aren't using, so we product agnostic here. So like some people will see this recording are from different companies. That's absolutely fine. As far as I'm concerned, if you're dead, you're dead. So disability is confusing because everyone's got the best disability. Dread disease is even more confusing because everyone's definitely got, and they've got catch-all benefits. So most of it's a load of shit. There are 4 reasons that why you dread disease: blindness, paraplegia, cancer, heart disease, those kinds of things. And all comprehensive dread diseases will cover those. Whether you get 100 or, I'm not sure why I would want a 200% payout. I just want the cover that I'm going to need. Okay, most people are oversold dread disease, which, in my opinion, which is the most expensive benefit, and the premium could be used elsewhere. Anyway, I won't get started. But it allows us to get very specific. I mean, clients we've recently had that we went through, in the end of the day, that they've actually end up spending more on their risk cover. However, the dread disease, we've moved to a level premium because that's now for life. Okay. And maybe the income disability, but their life cover, we've now put on an accelerated premium, but we've reduced that, but we've increased certain other benefits. So just working like this makes it a lot cleaner. So I see you, Haley, going to ask you about what tools do we use. We do use the RWP, okay. And what we started doing was actually creating the new clients under death. So because it gets very confusing when you're doing it all under that same client. And quite ironically, when we met with Tian recently, Tian, who develops it, he's the main guy with the RWP. He actually recommended to us that we do create a different scenario. And I think that's kind of what they've got planned come up in future. So it really makes sense. Otherwise, it can get very confusing. So we'll create a scenario for Joe Smith if he dies, Lauren's cover if Joe dies, Joe's cover if Lauren dies. And then it's quite easy to work like that. Simon, you've had your hand up there.
Yeah, I love the budget, Dirk, because that is I do a similar thing in an Excel sheet where line item you start removing expenses that are not going to be there on death, and you can obviously start to figure out lump sums versus now the need in dropping income for whatever, and then maybe possibly adding in new costs that come with disability, whether it's carer or healthcare or whatever. So you can get quite specific, which is important because then you know exactly why you have that cover, and then you reassess the next year. But I just want to show you something, because for me this is always really important, and I like sharing what I think are valuable resources. But often when people come in, like you say, they need to get a bit of perspective. They think they know what they want, and then our job is to help highlight to them, have you thought about this? Have you thought about an unexpected event and the impact it can have on you? And I agree, we all don't want to load them up with insurance until you experience something going wrong in your own client or whatever. And the first thing you do is going to go run to the file and check what cover they've got, because it's only important to them when something happens. So it's your job to at least illustrate or highlight to them, the reality of what they should have based on what they tell you. And I think that's often a hard part, as long as they understand what you're running through in that meeting, they will forget it. They will forget premium patterns. They will forget why they've had the cover. 5 years down the line, their whole situation's changed, and there could be an instance where someone comes back to you, you have to justify why they had that cover in the first place. So just in the beginning, to highlight the importance. I'll share my screen, and if anyone wants the link to this, if they see any value in it, it's absolutely fine. I'll send them an email. But it's from our friends at Old Mutual. I can't remember who actually shared this with me. I'll share my screen now. I'm just opening up the link. Okay. Okay, let me know if you can see a big sort of green wheel.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so this is called the sort of Old Mutual protection wheel, and you've got a salary drop-down range here. And the importance here is just highlighting to anyone, whatever sort of age bracket they're in, or you know, what salary bracket you add it to. So I'll just use someone who earns 30 to 35, and let's say they are 30 years old. If you can see where my mouse is, it will just quickly give them a worth, their worth of their future earning potential, and what could be lost if they lose their ability to earn an income on, you know, injury or illness. And for me, a lot of the time, they just like their brain melts. They say, well, how did you get to that figure? And you say to them, well, you know, what do you earn? You earn 30 grand a month times 360 for the increasing with inflation until you're 65. And if you can't work from tomorrow, that's what you lose. You can't pay for your bond, you lose the house, etc., etc. And a lot of people all of a sudden think like, jeepers, you know, I've never thought of it that way. And you say, yes, exactly. Your biggest sort of risk is losing that income. At least I've shown you what you could potentially lose if you choose not to insure it. We all know that it may well not happen. It's like less than 1% chance. Fair enough. Do you want to insure that risk or not? Do you want to take it, or do you want to exchange the risk over to the insurer in exchange for the premium? It's going to cost you X amount. And I feel like you just got to empower them to make a decision. If no one shows them that, they don't necessarily always think of it, you know, with that sort of risk. And then very quickly, so that takes like literally 2 minutes just to highlight them. I think all of a sudden their mind shifts into, okay, I need to actually take the conversation seriously. And then I should move on to the second one, where we take the same person, 30 to 35, and we give them ballpark figures to say, you know, more or less, this is what you can consider as a basic risk package. But this is before you've now moved to actually doing planning, budgets, inputting needs. What is your unique situation to actually recommend the right cover? This is just to say to them, well, someone in a similar salary bracket needs to protect their income. So they talk about splitting the disability between lump sum, which all they do is 2 times annual salary, and then more or less your net income. And then death cover is obviously ridiculously high because they're using a formula to draw 5% on your income. So to replace your income to your family, for example, taking into account no debt, nothing, just to replace your salary, and then severe illness, 2 times annual salary. So when you just, that's the conversation. Now they say, do you want to talk about it? Let's go and look at your unique needs. And then from there, you start to go to premium and say, okay, what's affordable? What do you want to insure? What you're not? If they after all that say to me, thanks, Simon, but you know, I'm not interested in insurance. There it is in my record of advice that we've had a chat. You know, you're not really interested in taking out cover, but it was important to illustrate to you what the impact would be should something happen. Okay, let's move on. I don't know if everyone else sees that as like as the right or wrong way to do it, but I think for me personally, I'd rather almost cover myself having had the right conversation and allow them to make a decision for themselves where they know the magnitude of the decision, and then you can go from there. And then lastly, I don't know if you can see this, but I have mentioned before, we use at work and we use IWP. But for the risk planning side, when I go and input those needs, you know, you can go and put in perspective for an individual person to say, from the conversation we had, all the stuff we've collected from you, that is typically how you want things to play out. The red is your need, and the green is what you have in place, your provisions. So your tax frees, your unit trusts, your this, your that. Do you realize how big that gap is between what you've got? Because a lot of people often say, well, I've got my investments, you know, if something happens, you know, I'll just fall on that. And you'll say, well, that's not going to last you nearly as long as you think it may. There's a huge gap do you want to do anything about it or not? Okay, that's my story. If anyone needs those resources, you're welcome to get them from me.
Thanks, Simon. I think that wheel's great because I think for me, especially the first wheel, because just highlighting the value of our future salaries is really important. Because I think you're right. I think people don't quite understand because they don't think about it. You know, and we know income protection is probably, well, it is the most important benefit that anyone can have, especially younger people, because you know that's the future. So thanks, that's great, man. I see Ferdy's already shared that wheel. I've downloaded already.
Great.
So
Great.
thanks, Russell.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you said earlier. Yeah, I think education is probably one of the biggest things that's lacking with a lot of clients when it comes to risk cover, because you know, I still see to this day as well, like you said, people don't know what they have, and that includes also like the risk benefits that they have with work. And it's also a very important conversation to have where we find a lot that clients are basically overinsured, or that's where the whole experience or notion comes from of like insurance is like a grudge purchase for people because they don't understand the intended purpose of why they took it out. And like to Simon's point that he brought up that, well, that's actually very important. That's also very valuable, is that I also stress that point with a lot of clients. It's like, okay, if you pass away or something happens to you, your ability to earn or this income source that comes into the house stops. You know, so it's also important to play that scenario out to clients of like, okay, if this stops, like, you know, what expenses, and I do similar thing with my clients as well, like a budget of like what expenses still carry on in that scenario, and like what investments can you access. Also, we might touch on like if there's taxes, but like what investments can you actually get out to like settle those expenses, and if it's enough. Because I think that's where clients then can identify or understand of like, okay, this is why they took out so much insurance or this amount of insurance, because a lot of times I've dealt with clients and they've got like 3 or 4 million rand life cover or disability cover, and they don't understand. A lot of them don't actually understand how the previous advisor got to that amount. I use both Wealth Integrator and the tool that Simon uses is also great. I use AssetMap, which also does help. I think in general, whatever tool fits or you comfortable with, as long as you can show the differences in each scenario of like, okay, if this happens, you know, this is how much you losing out on to support like your current lifestyle or your family's lifestyle. That's the main thing that you want to kind of stress to your clients, you know.
Yeah, I think, Russell, I mean, look, tools are a help, but a tool is exactly that. It's just a tool. You know, you don't want to take out cover because the tool tells you to. I think for us, it's more of a guideline for us, because to be honest, I don't think clients really understand those tools. But I think having that practical discussion, like what I showed and what Simon showed, what you're talking about is really important, because then people will understand what they've got. I mean, I had a client recently who she was previously with BrightRock, then the new broker came in, our meeting online, and sold a whole new suite of stuff. Well, he actually helped us with that, Russell. Turns out she had replaced the income protection with temporary income protection.
Jeez.
So she's an estate agent, very specific, and she had basically no permanent income protection, only temporary, and that's why it was so cheap. And her lump sum disability was not occupation specific, it was general. You know, so like you've got to be, as one client said, you've got to be a drooler to claim from it. So the premium was cheaper, but basically her chances of claiming were ridiculous. So looking at the cover is really important as well. I just quickly,
just to add on there, also with the just one point to your premium. I think that's also another thing that I also mentioned to clients that I still find to this day is the premium patterns is very important, because I find a lot of clients gravitate towards whatever's the cheapest. And also people don't understand how much their policies increase. So you've got your compulsory premium pattern, and then also they don't factor in the cover increase as well. Yeah, because like you said, I see that a lot where they take the cheapest policy or cover, and then it gets too expensive and they can't afford cover and they can't be insured again because they're older and their health might have deteriorated.
Yeah. Okay, Ryan, we'll come to you, Haley. I just see Ryan's asking about, do we discuss the estates and help with the drafting of wills and that? Yeah, we do. I think especially with younger clients, you know, if you do the planning up front, estate planning is really not an issue. you know, and if we have the luxury of working with someone who's got a state duty problem, then that's great. Then we could do that. But I think simple, just proper planning in earlier days, you can alleviate a lot of the estate planning issues that come along. On commissions, so I went for about 3 or 4 years where I took no upfront commission, as and when, mainly with Bright Rock, and I can tell you it hurt me. And clients, bottom line, clients don't get the benefit. The discounts are minimal. I see there was a chat on LinkedIn about this, I think, last week. But the discounts that clients are getting on their premiums by us going as and when are simply, it's not worth it for clients. I mean, you don't see 20-30% differences. So to me, it's another case where most insurers are just milking the system. They're not. I mean, the advisors getting, you know, a lot less income up front, and we know we've had the discussion about how tough it is to start in this industry and to earn a living. So again, I've got no issue with people taking upfront commission if you're doing a good job and the client's aware of it. Yeah. So the as and whens, it's nice and it's honourable, but I can tell you it will hurt you, and I don't think that it really is making much difference to the clients. I think the advice is the most valuable thing that we've got. Brian, okay, fine. Hayley, you got your hand up for a while.
Hi, it's more of a, I don't know, practical question, but I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were speaking about somebody who phoned in asking whether they should continue with their life cover once they've retired. And they gave their children the option to take over the premiums to then benefit at a point, you know, in the future when their parents might pass away. And it was quite a quick discussion at the end of the podcast. And they didn't really come to any sort of, not resolution, but sort of concise points to like leave the person that's listening to it with. So I was just wondering what the general feeling is about this. And obviously like an affordability thing is a question, but I was just wondering what everyone's thoughts are and how it's been treated in like cases you've seen.
That's a good question, Hayley. I think so. Like we can get quite holistic, or you know, it's like it sounds horrible that, you know, when I die, my children are going to benefit, so they're going to pay the premium. I mean, you know, are they going to try and knock me off? And I'm sure that's happened. But I mean, I think in some cases, you know, where an older client has been locked into a product where they've got really good rates, and maybe the health isn't great, then it's not. I don't see any issue with it. I mean, I suppose they could ask what is the insurable interest. But you know, also if what happens a lot these days is a lot of us will be supporting parents, you know, and that could be costing us money. And if you've got 3 kids, you could have one child who's doing extremely well financially, and then, you know, maybe another one is doing okay, and another one's really battling. So I think there's a place for it. I think there is especially where there is existing cover in place, and it's maybe on an older contract where you know, the rates are locked in and it's really good. So I think every situation is different, but I do think it's something. I wouldn't necessarily go and encourage someone to take out cover for that reason. But if there was something in place, and let's say, you know, my mother's turning 90 this year, and let's say she had some stage 3 cancer or whatever. I mean, to be quite honest, if we're going to take over that premium and get a payout, why not? I don't see a moral issue from it, because a lot of clients would like to leave a legacy for their children or their grandchildren in any case. The reality is a lot of adults are now helping their kids to start things financially, to help them buy houses or cars or pay for the education and stuff. So you know, I've got a grandchild. No, the big question is, do we start contributing towards that child's education? Because we know how important that is and how expensive it is. So yeah, I think it's different horses for different courses. But yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And also then when people get to retirement, do you find that they struggle to stop paying the premiums because they've contributed for so long and they're like, need the education on you. There was a reason you contributed because you needed it at that time, but now you don't need it anymore. So you were paying for what if, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to continue paying now. Is there a lot of education you have to do around that? Maybe when they don't need to because they don't have dependents or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I can deal with an example. I had 2 months ago here in St. Francis, where a couple moved here from Durban. They're 70, and they were paying 14,000 Rand a month in risk premiums. I mean, they had 3 different types of dread disease. They had more life cover than they needed. So after re-looking, and the only reason they had it is because the advisor in Durban had not told them to cancel it. They were locked into, I'll say it's a discovery product, which had the increase was 20% in the year. So we cancelled that, but the final increase went through the month, you know, because you got to give a month's notice. But I mean, there was 20%. So their pension was 40,000 Rand that they were getting in, and they're drawing too much. And 15,000 of that was going just to pay risk premiums. So we've restructured everything and saved them. I think we've got it down to about 5.5 now. 5. So because it's mainly dread disease cover that and also we've just moved. A lot of people don't know you don't have to take out new cover. You can often just switch premium patterns. So we've taken like the dread disease cover, we reduced it slightly and moved it from age rate to level premium. So yeah, I think the main people keep it, Haley, is just because they don't know any better. But there's a lot of that. So yeah.
Can I comment on that one as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, that's always a really interesting topic. There's so many sort of different outcomes. I think whenever you cancel cover, you should take that conversation quite seriously, because tomorrow if someone else comes in, and whether it's a family member, a spouse, and they say, why would you go and cancel his severe illness when he's now sitting at 65, and say 3 months later he comes in and he has a heart attack? And I think all I suggest here, and I do it quite often, is that if your premiums are high and encroaching onto your retirement, there's the trade, like we always talk about trade-offs. There's trade-offs in everything. So if you can't eat, you can't live, and you don't need that cover, then you personally should be able to cancel it without worrying. But before you do that, what I often do is I'll take a what do you call it, a return IRR calculator. So Alan Gray have a very basic Excel sheet that I always use for that. You take the policy schedule and you can break down benefit per benefit to forecast the premium and do a projection, and you literally show that to a client. So say that father is 60 years old, he's got life cover and he's paying X amount. You can take the premium projections and make sure it's as accurate as possible. And you do it over 20 years, or you do it over life expectancy, or whatever it is for you. And if he's got that life cover in place plus a cover growth, you make sure you kind of forecast that forward, and you can show that person the rate of return right down to whenever they choose to see. So they can make a decision ahead of time to say, first of all, is it affordable? Can I afford those premiums? Am I willing to pay those premiums? Because although it is a bit of a moral thing, I understand. In my family, this stuff is often not talked about, right or wrongly, but with others, sometimes they do talk about it. But really, if you break it down, it's just a financial decision. Are you willing to pay the premium? Do you like the look of your return on investment? How is your dad's health, or whatever in that case? And you can actually see. So you'll say to him, okay, 60 now, let's go to 5 years. Return on investment would be 40% compound growth per year. Do you like that? Yes. Okay, but do you stretch it out? Go to 20 years and your rate of return drops to 9. Anywhere that's still pretty competitive, but you at least just empower them. Say, here's the numbers as accurately as we can give them to you, and you decide, what to do with it. And you can apply that to severe illness, life cover, whether it's an existing policy or they're considering taking out a new one as an investment. But it is typically an investment, because they could take that 5,000 Rand a month and invest it in any product. Or they could say, you know what, I'll wait on my RA right now. I'll take over the premiums on my dad's policy, because, within 10 years, his health is not great. And if he does happen to pass away, as devastating as that is, I've looked at this as a financial decision, and I'll get paid about 2 million or whatever, and I would have spent more or less X, and that would fast track you know, my own retirement planning, and then I will pick up from there and carry on. So I don't know if everyone really agrees with that, but I simplify it down to what, you know, for what it is. Do you need the cover? No, not really. Okay. Do you want to play the game with the life assurers and carry on and see it as an investment, or do you want to, you know, cancel? My personal opinion is, for me, everyone has different goals at the end of the day, whether they leave their kids a legacy or they don't want to leave their kids a legacy, they need to do their own thing. With my own premiums, if I'm going to pay for the cover now, I'm going to make sure that the life assurer at the end of the day is going to pay out. So I'll do what I can to make sure I keep those premiums. And if I start running into trouble for affordability, you can be sure I'm going to go to my kids first and foremost and say, listen, I'm going to cancel this because I've got to retire. Here's your option to whether you can afford it or not, or drop the cover, and you take it from there. But I think everyone must maybe see this also as a point, is when you talk about risk cover, it's today. You can't. They're making a decision today. Don't worry about the premiums that were paid, because if you approach your child, whatever, at that time, he hasn't paid any premiums yet. Even though you've paid for 10 years, he's making today's decision, and you saying, right, return on investment from age 60 to whenever, you know, 70 or whatever the case is.
Simon, I think that's a brilliant way of looking at it. I mean, you know, take the emotion out of the situation, and the fact is, you know, it's like I said earlier, you know, a lot of us parents help their kids in any case in some form or another, or they want to leave a legacy. But I mean, like making it about the numbers, I think is great. I've got a case right now where I have to advise clients who are well off. I mean, they've got north of 50 million. They're busy selling their business, and they're asking. You know, he's got 4.5 million dread disease, which he's already claimed on. They're paying 10,000 rand a month on, and they've got 10 million rand life cover. He's paying nearly 8 grand a month on, and like, do they keep this cover? It's like, well, you don't need it. The dread disease, we could just reduce that. But I mean, you're going to have 60, 70 million rand where now you live. You don't need it, but it's still like, how do we work it out? So I mean, what you've given me some food for thought. Maybe we need to do some projections and just look at what the numbers mean, as opposed to you know, the other side of it. Yeah, Ryan, you got your hand up.
Guys.
Yeah, just Simon's thought. I'm going to ask a silly question. It's just like an idea that I have now, but I just don't know how one would put it into practice. But is there like maybe a way where a trust can be set up, and somehow on death of that person, that the money gets paid to the trust and that there's beneficiaries?
Most certainly.
How would one structure something like that?
Well, you could. There's different ways of doing it, and there will be different tax implications. But I mean, so you could make the trust the owner. You could obviously you can make a trust the beneficiary. You could, through your will, set up a testamentary trust. So there are different ways of doing it, and I think it would be determined partly by tax, and then also, you know, what were you actually trying to do? What was the purpose of that money? So, yeah, I mean, so yeah, because obviously if you're not leaving it to a surviving spouse, there would be estate duty implications. It could be executor's fees implications. So there are different ways of doing it. It's quite simple now. You know, in the old days where you had life cover that had investment linked to it, it was different there, because if you'd see that policy across, there would be a sale and a purchase of that contract. Whereas, you know, if you've got a pure risk product now, it's much easier, because you can just simply, you can do a session of change of ownership, and out session. So yeah, but it's good to discuss this, because there are different ways of doing it. So also, I mean, Brian, you bring up a whole other subject. So it's one thing having the cover, but you know, how do we house that cover? You know, it's like if you've got a life product with, say, disability or dread disease on it, and that's in a trust, like, is that practical? How does that work? What are the tax implications of all of that? So there's quite a bit to consider. For me, I'd rather keep things as simple and straightforward as possible. You know, I mean, estate duty tax is something that, you know, if we're worrying about it, great, it means you built up wealth. But as long as you know what it's going to be, you can plan around it.
Yeah. And just my last question for the broader forum. Does anybody deal with any risk consultant that in a way themselves is independent? I know in the past I dealt with somebody who had contracts with 6 different providers, and he kind of marketed himself as an independent risk specialist. So he would come to your firm and basically want to partner with you. But every time you would request maybe risk quotes from him, he would do it, you know, through 6 different providers and give you more unbiased view of what's the benefit of each. I'm not sure if anybody here on this forum is dealing with somebody like that. Because what I found with risk is that the service that you receive from your consultant, specialist consultant, if it's a good experience, then your client will have also a good experience. But if it's a bad experience, then I kind of see that it kind of does trickle down to the client as well as being a bad experience. So for me, it's important to partner with somebody that's knowledgeable and good as a service offering.
Anyone know anyone?
I don't know what happened to Brian, but he used to deal with someone like that. I don't know if he fell off the call.
I see somebody said I can't.
Oh,
Yeah,
Brian.
I think I dealt with them in the past. Yeah.
There is. Have you heard of Allegiance Consulting?
No.
So if you have a look at Allegiance Consulting, there's a lady there named Deirdre O'Reilly. So they don't sell product. They don't do anything. They just do a full estate plan. They all either got their advanced certificate in financial planning, or they got a legal background, or they have been in the advice space. Interesting people. We're dealing with them at the moment on 2 really big clients, and they've added a lot of value. They're not prescriptive in the sense of anything to do with product. It's just shortfalls, etc. So it is a nice little support team, if I can put it like that. And they ride on the back. Their system that they use is Avalon. And when you look at Avalon, it's actually very similar to RWP. So I don't know if there's similar developers. June could probably confirm, but it's very similar when you look at some of the whale graphs, etc.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. I mean, my experience, you know, we kind of deal with whoever gives us the best service. Like I said, you know, if you're dead, you're dead. You can't be half dead. So that's simple. Disability, if you can't work, I don't care if you lose an ear or lose your pinky. I'm not worried about that. But if you're unable to work, then it's important that we protect that. And I think most comprehensive disabilities, both lump sum and income protection, will protect that if you go occupation specific. And then again, dread disease. There's those 4 major reasons where your major claims are paid. Not only where claims are paid, but which are actually where you actually need the money. So, you know, it's very confusing because you get all these benefits out there that these product providers create. Like if that happens and if that happens. And to be honest, if it's not going to affect you financially, then it's a nice to have. It's not necessary. And if it's a nice to have, generally you're paying for it. So, you know, that's money that could go towards either settling debt or future savings. So yeah, it's tricky because I would love for the regulators to come in and say, right, this is own occupation disability. It's got to have these elements to it. This is dread disease. It's got to have these, because for us, to be honest, it's impossible to work out, you know, how to compare these different companies' benefits. As I said earlier, they've all got the best income protection. They've all got the best dread disease. Catch it all is exactly not that. It doesn't catch all, believe me. So, you know, it's just a phrase. So I think our experience has been just dealing with people where we get great service, because when there's a problem, you want those people to be on your side. But yeah, did someone else have their hand up? Okay. Right. Anything else around the risk? Again, I just want to stress that I've just found that although tools are valuable, if you want someone to keep their cover and understand what they've got and be happy to pay for their cover, you know, spending a bit of time and running through their budget in the event of death or disability is really, really valuable. And it's also much easier, like 2 years later, when a client says to you, but why have I got this cover? And you are then able to explain, remember we did this, and actually show them. It makes it real and living. Okay, any other questions on the risk?
I don't have a question, but so I think what Simon said was like some of the most valuable stuff I've actually ever heard on these calls. No offense, Dirk, but it's these are the types of things when you talk about the conversations with clients. You know, does my child take over my policy? What is the cost going to be for me? The IRR. I mean, Ben and I on the side were just talking about how we would, you know, if we're in that situation with our parents, what calcs would we do? I'd do that with a client. I'm doing that with clients now. They're paying $8 a month for 4 million cover, which they want to give their children because they want to have a legacy. But so I'm manually doing those calculations, and it's not difficult to do. You just need your HP 10B2, and then you can kind of do it. But I never knew that Ellen Gray had those tools. I try not to go on there. So I'm going to download that now, and I think that's super valuable. But these are the kind of valuable things that I think, especially young planners, but clearly people as ancient as myself, like really need to know. It's proper advice, it's proper planning, and it helps make massive decisions that have a massive impact on people. And then, for instance, you know, if the children take over 3,000 a month, they split it, it could seed a family trust, like Ryan mentioned. So, I mean, that's powerful, but a lot of people might just dismiss that conversation out of hand because it wasn't in the textbook. And it's not a conversation maybe they're incentivized to have by their franchise or brokerage. So yeah, so thanks, Simon. Super valuable.
Pleasure. Yeah, it is actually, you made a good point now at the end there. You're not incentivized to do this. That's a big thing, unless you're taking out a new policy, sure. But I think for me, always in the back of my mind, it's not because we are the reason isn't because we've got a compliance office that could come for us. For me, the thing in the back of my mind is, I always think if something goes wrong. So if the guy on your recommendation, the guy cancels a severe illness, and a month later, he or the spouse, they don't care that they've cancelled it. They will come to you and say, why did you tell us to cancel? You know, we're in a high risk age group. You know, that was a financial decision, and you shouldn't have let us cancel or whatever. We could have afforded it. People can turn on you quickly, and no disrespect to any client. It's not about loyalty or whatever. It's just you have to almost show them the decision they're making. Are you aware that this is, although you're going to save 3,000 Rand a month, you know, you do have multiple claims or this or that. You could be in for another million in a short space of time. So you decide, okay, you don't want it perfect. At least we had the chat, and you can move on, you know. I think most of the time it's just about empowering them to make the right decision for themselves, and in a way protecting yourself so that you don't revisit it. We've literally got a case in our office now where the guy is going back 20 years. Luckily, everything's kosher. There's paper, there's reports, there's like emails on why they've done it. But you just always got to think someone could come back to you when they're in dire straits and blame you for the reason why they did something. And if you can't prove it, and I'm not saying, we all know writing a comprehensive record of advice is close to impossible, but if you cover, as you know, the basics and just justify the reasons why you've done it, or why the client has decided now that they're going to cancel, and that we did just look at it, then at least you can sleep easy. You know, you'll never have an issue. Just that Ellen Gray calc is it's not a risk specific at all. It's actually an investment calc, but it's on an Excel sheet. You can plug in contributions. They forecast it really nicely, and then you can obviously you know, look at. I'm happy to help anyone who wants to use it to show how I use it for risk. Really nice, really basic, and then it gives you nice projections. And I mean, we've got all these other tools, but for those specific conversations, it's a great tool. I got another client literally last week come in and ask this exact question. He says, "What do I need my severe illness? Do I need my life cover where I am now?" And last little thing on this. I've said before, I've got various clients. I don't have only people with a fair amount of bucks. I've got those who's starting out, etc. But the one example I can tell you guys, which I find it hugely fulfilling. So, I mean, lots of the times in this job, you are trying to help solve a problem. There's a lady she's very asset rich, but relative cash poor. So she's got a bit of cash, but in comparison to her assets, her shares in her business, her properties, and all the rest, you know, she doesn't necessarily have enough. When I showed her estate plan and the bills that she is due to pay, capital gains, estate duty, all the rest, she doesn't have a spouse, there's no rollover. It came down to the most awesome problem solving. The plug-in was her life cover. She was healthy. She's 60 years old, super healthy, and it made so much financial sense for her to take out a policy. Okay, sure, her kids are going to inherit very nicely the assets, but her intentions in her will to play out were not to sell those assets. They were each going to get this property and that one and blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, the way your will's going to play out, your kids are going to have to start selling assets to generate cash to pay for the bills. And she was like dumbstruck. She said, sure, I thought they were, yes, I know they were going to inherit nicely, but there's actually problems coming. So I said to her, well, you've got a really simple solution. If you get the cover, it just so happened at the time she was paying a massive policy on her dad's life. She was almost going to cancel. He ended up passing away due to COVID, and she got this money. Her cash flow went from paying a 30 grand premium to 5, solving all her problems through risk, not investment. So I just find that, like, we have all these tools, and if we listen and ask the right questions, you can really do amazing things in terms of, I mean, she was saving massive amounts of money, like you cannot believe. And the solution was a life policy. It wasn't a fancy investment plan or offshore investment or whatever, you know what I mean? And I just find those sorts of scenarios, I mean, and every person is different, very, very sort of fulfilling to help them achieve. Because at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're just helping them, you know, with the solution. That's it.
Thanks, guys. I think this is one of the best sessions we've had, and what's coming through here is the passion that you guys have, which makes me really happy. That's why I do this. You know, I mean, someone just said we don't get paid for doing that. I mean, that's just like we do. That's exactly why, you know, that's the difference between a lifestyle financial planner, as I see it, and a broker. Okay, is that we, you know, a broker can do a job and it's fine, done nothing wrong and all that, but a proper lifestyle planner really, really cares about their clients, like we really care. And again, this also speaks to why you have to have a process and really, really get to know your clients well, and why you can't have hundreds of clients. You simply can't, because you can't know hundreds of people as well as we need to know our clients, what's specific about them, their families and everything, you know, to be able to work this stuff out. Like, okay, this one's got a child with a bit of a problem, so maybe we should look at keeping the cover because it could help out that grandchild or whatever. So I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing. I listened to a podcast on the way back yesterday from the airport. Dan Halet's got a new podcast, which is really cool. And he actually interviewed Abraham Okasanya, who started Timeline. And he spoke about the 4 Ps, which is so important. So he spoke about knowing the person, which is obviously what we need to do. And then their purpose, in other words, so like, we're getting deep now, but this is really what we should be doing. What is their purpose in life? What's going to make them have a great life? And then the next one was, shit, I've forgotten now. But the fourth one, the third one was the plan. In other words, so first the person, like what's unique about them, then like what is their deeper purpose in life? What is going to make them have just the greatest life ever in their eyes? And then the plan that's going to help that work. And then the portfolio right at the end. Whereas I just thought of such a great analogy, because I'm going to write something on it, because actually the industry is the other way around. It all starts with a portfolio, be it the risk portfolio or in the investment portfolio, and they don't even get to the person or their purpose. So, but guys, this is great stuff. Russell.
Yeah, great. This is also why I attend these sessions, because like sharing this input and stuff, and like Brian and Simon said, even though we, you know, we in between, we don't have much experience as Dirk, we still learn so much from these sessions. And I think to your point, I want to add 2 points just to what, you know, Brian and Simon were saying as well. Just on like documenting and like using tools. That's 100%. And also what Dirk mentioned earlier. The tools are actually, if you think about it, the tools, as we've always said, they're not meant to give the advice. They're just there to, I would say, enhance your ability to get your message and your advice across to your clients. And that's why I always say to clients, and I've had it actually these past 2 weeks recently, where I tell them that I'm just here to give you advice, coaching, and guidance. You, at the end of the day, have to make the decision. And I'm here to show you like the outcomes or, you know, what will happen in the future based on the decisions you make today. And interestingly enough, I, you know, on the one point, I would also say it's an old age, you know, kind of notion for any young planner or any planner out there. We've always been told, and I've been taught that since day one, it's like, aside from the client advice record, any point in which you give advice, and I don't mean you have to like really go over the top, but document it and cover it, and then like get the client to like sign it off, because it is unfortunate. I mean, mostly for all of us, our clients are really good and we have predominantly good clients, but you will get within your career like 1 or 2 clients that they made a decision against your advice. And then later on, 3 years down the line, things go wrong. And then the first person they want to blame is you. You know, and yeah, you've bent over backwards for this client, you know, and you poured your heart out into like helping them. And you'll be surprised. People change so much when their situation and especially their finances kind of just flip, you know. And I had two instances basically where I showed 2 clients, one good and one bad, the outcome of like their decisions. So like the better one is, firstly, there's one client where he had been saving consistently, and pretty much he's basically into retirement. And he didn't save enough in his early years. So when he worked out his retirement, he had just enough for, you know, 15 years to retire on his kind of basic salary. He never taken withdrawals before, and he didn't need to take any withdrawals from his retirement funds. And sadly, I knew from past conversations that it was also influences from his new partner, that what happened during COVID, because interest rates were low, she bought a car that she actually couldn't invest in. Now she's obviously can't afford it, and the payments have gone sky high because of the interest rates. And I knew from past conversations when I met him, and she was in the background, that she had possibly influenced him to like take this withdrawal out. So he said, no, he wants to take those withdrawal. I did like a summary plan and showing his outcome. I said, you know, by taking this withdrawal, you're going to reduce your years in retirement, or be able to retire when you get to 65 now, because he's 55 and he's working through. You're going to reduce that to probably half the years that you can retire. So you're cutting your provision in half basically by doing this withdrawal. And I put it in simple English so that he could understand some from the figures, like simple English. This is what it means. And I said even the final line, meaning like, you're not going to have enough to get you to this age. So your money is going to run out. There's going to be nothing. I won't have anything. I put it in clear, simple English. I said, if we need to proceed with withdrawal, I'm happy to do that. I said to him as well, I said, I'm not here to force you to make any decisions. I'm here just to give you advice on what is the outcome of your decisions, and you sign off on that, you know. You have to know what you, so he signed it, going ahead with the withdrawal, you know. That is a clear example of like why it's good to record that advice given, because when he does run out of money, I know for certain, or those type of clients, then there's a high chance they're going to come back and blame me or the advisor, want to say, where's my money? So that's a example that you can protect yourself against. And then a positive experience I had was with a younger client. And yes, I understand each client has their own circumstances. But with this younger client, he had always learned, and I had started with him for about 2 years now. I had coached him into understand of like, you buying yourself future years by putting your money to work now and not spending unnecessary. And we had updated his planning. He's probably committing. He's still at home. He doesn't have debt. You know, he's probably like his 3rd year or 4th year in working. So he's committing a lot to reinvesting and like, you know, not splurging like a lot of his peers. And we were able to increase his contributions. And when we did like a plan or projection of what his savings and how good he's been saving so far and what he plans to do based on his decisions and outcomes, he is probably in his mid to late 20s. He's a software developer, so he's getting paid by American companies quite well. That's another notion to take. But by just following with his habits and what we've brought in, he's probably one of those rare clients where we've worked out he's able to retire at 55, basically, as he keeps going on now, instead of having to retire at 60, 65. And like one of the other outcomes of his decisions that we spoke about is that, you know, he was initially peer pressured by a lot of his peers, like, oh, you should get a property because everyone gets that, you know, but that wasn't what spoke to him. And what he wanted to actually do, he realized, you know, he doesn't have luxurious expenses and all that. He said, like, you know, I want to kind of not retire, but I want to take like breaks in between my career where I can work more as a freelancer. And then he said, like, what I enjoy doing is actually coming down to JBay to serve like at the end of every month to de-stress. I said, well, instead of buying a property in Cape Town, because everyone's saying you should as an investment, why don't you look at us saving towards that so that it's a beach house and it's an investment for you. So you can come down to relax once a month or every second month. And then in the months that you're not here, you can rent it out and so forth. And that spoke to basically his decisions and his own thoughts. I didn't force him to it, you know, it was all based on like what he actually truly wanted. So I think those are two different scenarios I've had where, you know, we just here to give advice and explain to clients in simple English of like, what is the outcomes that's going to have on their life based on the decisions they make, and then they can see the outcome play out, you know.
Yeah, thanks for that, Russell. It is, and I think you're quite right. Like where we know people are making decisions which are going to not be in their own interest, specify, put it down there in cursive, in bold, underline it. You're quite right. Not only because we want to be able to show them later on that we did tell them that, but then also we're probably actually thinking, do we want that person as a client? Because I don't really want to have, I don't want to be around people who, I don't want to be there when the shit hits the fan, especially if we knew it was going to happen, you know, then I would just rather work with happy people who yeah, okay. All right, anything else? I thought we were going to battle to fill this time, but we clearly have not done that. All right, I want to share some stuff that I learned last week. I am still learning, Russell. Or was that Brian? I'm not that old. 55 tomorrow, but I'm not that old actually. Although I can get a pensioner's card. So Ben, will you please organize one for me, please, tomorrow?
Happy birthday.
Dirk, are you going to take your full 1/3 lump sum tomorrow?
I don't have to speak to my financial planner. Yeah. Okay, so what was really interesting, you know, I chat to a lot of guys in the UK who are lifestyle planners like us. And I've got to know some of them pretty well, and I've met some of them before. And on this trip, I met a lot more, and it was quite amazing, you know, that the people at the two conferences I went to are very much in the lifestyle planning mode, where they call it financial life planning, or all of that. And just, you know, I'm part of this community, and then also Volentava, which is for more established businesses that certainly people like. There are a few of you that I should chat to about that, about joining that. But what we got so much in common is the sharing and the caring that all these planners have. I mean, I was just received so warmly. It was absolutely unbelievable. And, you know, everyone just talks about what they do, you know, so this care gene that this group has, that Volentava has, it really is, it's pretty contagious. But there was some interesting stuff. With Brett Davidson, so we've been working with Brett for about a year, and that's really working on the business and trying to get our structures right and our processes, and it really is about trying to make a business profitable. So like doing great work with clients, but actually we all need to make money at the end of the day, and we got to run it as a business. And it was quite interesting. Just facts, which I think we know, but we kind of don't know, is you know, is at least 80% of our income comes from existing clients. So it's either because we are earning ongoing fees through AUM or however we charge, or they're adding new money, or they're referring people to us. And a lot of, you know, when businesses are looking to grow, or we're looking to grow, a lot of the focus is around new clients, which is important. But you know, he just said it's so important to have our operations working really slickly. So our admin team are really, really important. Zoe, thank you. it you know, focusing on that and having good systems and being able to service our clients well is really, really important. And we know that's where a lot of the industry lacks. You know, where people have got, I've got 300 clients. Well, you got 300 victims or people you sell stuff to. You can't have 300 clients. That's my view. So that was important. And then all around the ease of doing business and moving from complexity to simplicity. Like we're talking about risk now, and as this discussion went on, it like got really complex. It's really not as simple as you need R1 million life cover or 75% of your income. It really can get really complex, and we know that it is in the needs and it is in the products. But I think what's important is that we move it to simplicity so that, you know, clients like understand what they have. So those are some of the points that came through there. The next conference was with Abraham Advisor 3.0 and just some stuff there. Interesting, only 8% of UK clients are advised. Only 8% of adult UK people are getting advice from advisors. So there's a massive market, and I think in SA, also because of the demographic, because of apartheid and what's happened and where the wealth sits, we know that, and that's kind of the challenge. And I think a lot of the time, a lot of us are trying to help those people who simply can't afford us. And for us, we really can't afford to be working with too many of them. Those are realities. So there's no judgment or call on that. It's just a reality. That was really interesting. And then also around AI. So ChatGPT, everyone's talking about it, and we've looked at it as well, like to help write articles or to do things or whatever. And it was quite interesting. The guys were saying where you've had levels of advisors, you've had like pretty average, then pretty decent, and then brilliant. What it's going to be doing is it's going to let those pretty average guys move up to pretty good, because and that's what AI is going to do. Whether we're talking about ChatGPT for research, because I mean, if you don't know the answer, you can type it into Google or into other ChatGPT. It's just going to give you the answer, and it's going to be 90% correct. It's not going to be all there, but it's going to be pretty good. But it's going to allow you, or if you're using it for articles, if you're trying to write something and you can't think of brainstorm, but it's not going to move you to brilliant, and brilliant is really where it is. So all it's going to do, it's going to uplift a lot of your very average shitty brokers, advisors. So again, it's just saying that we need to see it as a tool to make us even better at what we do. And that's a risk as well, because there are going to be a lot more people. If we're doing a pretty good job, there are going to be a lot more people now doing a pretty good job because of AI. Very, very lucky here is that in the UK, consolidators are battling. So, and I know some of us in this group are part of consolidators in some form. So they're talking corporate. So what the big thing is there's been a lot of cheap money around for years. Interest rates have been extremely low. My mate, I told you, who's got a little business, was offered £12 million for his business. I have to keep, because I'm trying to do the maths and I keep thinking I'm wrong. So I've got this this app that allows me, every time we bought coffee or Guinness, it depressed me. But £12 million is almost 300 million rand. Now, if someone came to me and offered me 200 million rand for my business, I would really battle to turn that down. Anyway, good on them, he did, because they were just going to chop up the business, keep the good clients, move them into the expensive funds, and that. But the reality is that they call them consolidators. They are really, really battling. And we've heard in the industry all these years, the one-man shows, the small businesses, you're going to battle, you've got to join a network. It's quite the opposite. It's your most profitable businesses are smaller businesses. So not the one-man shows battle a bit because of, they just don't have, they're carrying all the expenses themselves. Your like 20 advisors up are battling again because you're going to have more kind of corporate services that are needed in that. But it's your smaller groups of like 2 to 10 advisors that are the most profitable, that are doing the best, and are doing great work. So that was really important. And also just we had Seth Godin, he finished up now. Seth Godin is like a guru. I don't want to know what they paid him. I know the one woman who spoke, she owns one of the football clubs, I think West Ham, or she's got shares in there. She got paid 20,000 rand to speak, which is R500,000. One of my mates, he wasn't paid to speak at all. He was quite upset that he didn't get anything. But Seth Godin, he must have come in at I don't know how much, but this guy, the wisdom is just absolutely brilliant. And I could go on about it. But the big thing he said that stuck out for me is that the world is unstable, and it's always going to be unstable. So, I know those of you who are new to the industry, like we think it's different. We've got Ukraine war, we've got markets crashing, we've got, like, believe me, in my 30 years, we've been through 25% interest rates, where you could stick your living annuity into a money market fund and get an 18% guaranteed return. It didn't last. So, yeah, the world is unstable, and I think you've got to just carry on doing whatever we do, regardless. It's never going to settle down, and that instability is simply just going to accelerate. So there's a hell of a lot more, and maybe when I get the slides, I'll share some of the other stuff with you guys. But thanks. I think today was a fantastic session, and what made it really great is that everyone was contributing, and that's why I know I seem like a bit of a taskmaster, where like people who don't attend after a while, I kind of reboot them. It's not that I don't like them. I don't know many of you guys very well, but it's just because this group is about sharing and learning from each other, and even the newest of those in the industry, by asking questions that you may think are silly, they're actually not. By asking questions, you'll probably find the other people that are wanting to know the answers to those same things as well. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything to say before we log off.
I got one more, Dirk. You were talking about the world is unstable, and this is another resource. Happy to pop on the group, and I'm going to share my screen. If anyone can find a place for this is brilliant. So you said it. I'm not sure if you guys have got this, but yeah, whenever I talk to people about investing and time and the fact that there's a war on at the moment, this is a great resource to use. Can you see this PDF?
Yeah.
Okay, in this PDF, you can go and toggle on. So it's the JSE, history of the JSE since 1950 to end of 2022. So a little bit outdated. They'll probably send a new one soon. But you can go and toggle off on the left-hand side here. You can go and pop in market crashes, global history events, global finance, SA history. And when you show them that and how busy that is, and saying to them, if you isolate what's going on right now, it's nothing new. Yes, it's a new event, but the impact is the same as what's come before. There's always going to be something else, a new catalyst. We don't know what it is. But if you just show them the effect of investing in cash, inflation versus, say, S&P and the JSE, you can show them over time what their 100 Rand would have grown to had they just left it. And it's important to show them, don't be conservative. Don't worry too much. The world will carry on. Yes, it's unstable. It will always be unstable. So if anyone wants this, it's a brilliant resource to just settle the nerves of some of the people that you may see. But yeah, I found it to be very valuable. Right?
Simon, that looks great. Please, just if you can put that on the group, please, either email or on the WhatsApp group.
Yeah,
that is great.
So. Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
Cool.
And guys, again, I know the chats that go on the WhatsApp group, and then you guys, I'm sure, chat on your own as well. But this is also, the big part about this is giving back, so helping each other. So we know that this is a safe place. If anyone wants to reach out to each other, please do so. And again, we're also happy to grow this. So if you know anyone else who you think might benefit or add value to the group, so then just let us know. Okay. Okay, guys, have a great rest of the week, rest of the month, and any ideas for future chats you can put in the group. Otherwise, I'll come up with something.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Cheers,
so
guys.
much, Dirk.
Thank you.